Welcome back to the Worlds Collide series. Today I'll be settling the debate of Alex Mercer versus Cole MacGrath, giving you my opinion on who wins and where they scale. I'll also address misconceptions about their powers and how their scaling works. I won't be listing their powers and abilities here, as both characters have dedicated videos that outline their arsenals. If you're unfamiliar, check out the Alex Mercer vs Albert Wesker video and Cole MacGrath's respective video. This video will focus solely on determining who wins, addressing individual categories in detail. If I don't mention or expand on something in given sections, it's likely covered in the miscellaneous part of the video, where I dive deeper into specific points. I'll be focusing on the best of each character has to offer, so I won't be starting from the ground up. This isn't a power-up video, so I won't be wasting time on lower tier scaling. Instead, I'll get straight to the point that dictates the verdict. The categories I'll be covering are attack potency, durability, speed, including both reaction and travel, hacks, miscellaneous, and the final conclusion. With that being said, let's begin with the first category, attack potency. Let's start this video off with Cole MacGrath. His best showings in attack potency place him roughly in the sea to large mountain range, based on his ability to generate cumulonimbus clouds during the ionic vortex and storm, which would yield outputs between 12.24 megatons and 2.77 gigatons. However, the ionic storm's lightning, as confirmed by the wattage in the infamous 2 primer guide, scales between multi-city block to small town level. This suggests that while Cole can produce a storm, the lightning itself doesn't scale directly to the energy required to form those clouds. If you're confused, fuck. Imagine me, when I discovered that. Now if you're upset about this, don't whinge and whine to me in the comments about it. Take it up with Sucker Punch and their statements in the primer guide. I'm just presenting the facts as I find them. If you don't like it, that's unfortunately tough titties sunshine. Now let's continue with some rebuttals. Now, none of you might argue that Cole destroying the ray sphere should put him at sea level. The quick answer, no. The long answer, the ray sphere has several issues that make this claim questionable. First, there's evidence suggesting that the ray sphere didn't take its own blast. In both instances, when Cole and Bertrand used it, the immediate area around the device remained intact, while everything else was vaporized. Infamous 2 even emphasizes that the crater in Numereus and Empire City are parallel, reinforcing this point. There is also a statement in Infamous 1's instruction manual where, in Cole's own words, he was unscathed. I will read the direct quote. "So why am I alive? How did I escape unscathed?" Now I know that I didn't, not really. No one gets out of a disaster like that unmarked. It's just that I was scarred in a different way, given superhuman powers like nothing I'd ever thought possible. This is from the man's own mouth. He even says he was unharmed. Given the evidence I found, I don't believe it's reasonable to scale him to destroying something that probably didn't tank its own blast. But I will say this, if there wasn't a safe spot with the activation and it was one giant burnt hole in the ground, or statements about conduits being immune didn't exist, I'd happily give him that. But because of the safe spot and a tidbit of lore, it's not really in good faith to assume it did take its own blast. And if I hear fucking AOE fallacy,
I'll cause you some serious fucking pain.
But let's address it anyway. So as by the definition on the Versus Wiki, this is when someone uses a destructive capability feat to counter an attack potency feat. Now let me address why my position doesn't fit this fallacy. To clarify, I'm not disputing that the ray sphere possesses significant destructive capability or attack potency. However, this power doesn't translate to beings like Cole who are specifically immune to its radiation effects. This is also shown with other animals that possess the conduit gene as well, with examples like rat and various other animals Kessler experimented on using the ray sphere.
Experiment number 34J. Placing a male rat of average size into a lead box. The ray sphere is in a secondary chamber adjacent to test subject. All previous experiments have ended in instantaneous death of the subject. Closing the lid, activating the ray sphere. Ray sphere is cycling down, and wait, I can hear the subject moving. Unbelievable! It's flying! Damn it! Shoot it! Shoot it!
Let's use an analogy to make this clear. Consider Natsu from Fairy Tail. If there were a fire attack that could wipe out an entire country and Natsu stood right in the epicenter unharmed, we wouldn't classify it as a country level durability feat for him. Why? Because Natsu's immunity to fire means that the attack, no matter how powerful, simply doesn't affect him in the same way it would affect others. Similarly, Cole's survival of the Ray's Fierce Blast isn't a demonstration of sea level durability. Instead, it's a result of inherent resistance as a conduit due to specific types of energy that the Ray Sphere emits. This immunity nullifies the Ray Sphere's destructive effects on him, making it inappropriate to scale his durability or attack potency to the Ray Sphere's full potential. Furthermore, we have clear evidence that the Ray Sphere's own blast radius did not encompass the area immediately surrounding it. As seen in both the first and second game, the ground and structures around the device remained intact, which suggests that the Ray Sphere didn't endure the full force of its own explosion. This fact further disqualifies any argument that Cole's destruction of the Ray Sphere scales him to sea level AP or durability. To sum up, while the Ray Sphere is capable of immense destruction, this doesn't scale to Cole due to his immunity, and the blast localization impact within the safe zone. The evidence doesn't support scaling Cole to the Ray Sphere's maximum output. With that clarified, this concludes Cole's AP section. If you're wondering about the scaling related to the Beast or Kessler, I'll address those in the miscellaneous section of the video. Any other questions you have about those categories are likely to be covered there as well. So for Alex. Alex has technically several different avenues of scaling. These include multiple metas like the bomb meta, which if you're familiar with how I scale prototype, should know what this includes, but if you are new or unfamiliar with it, I'll give you a super quick rundown. This is based on the Supreme Hunter's claim that it could withstand the bomb after consuming Alex. To survive this, Alex would need to be at least as strong, if not stronger than at least half the power of the bomb. Simples. The second meta, the Cloud meta, this is a newer meta which I hadn't fully explored until recently. Thanks to the help from Hanukkah, who calculated the feat for me, the Cloud meta comes from the instance where Alex summons or produces thick black clouds that cover Manhattan, as seen during the weapon animation and in his fight against James at the end of Prototype 2 in Murder Your Maker. During the fight, a storm suddenly appears, and in the cutscene where James consumes the infected after the battle, there's a massive hole in the sky indicating the scale of the storm Alex and James created. The third meta, the Planet meta. This is another recent meta that's come to my attention recently. This seems to happen far too often for my liking. I'm going to start taking this personally as a researcher pretty soon, but I digress. It is intriguing, though heavily dependent on interpretation. It comes from comments made by Dan Jolly, the story writer of Prototype 2 and its prequel comic, in an interview.
What can you tell us about the story? It doesn't look like it's Alex Mercer this time around, so what's going on?
Yeah, so what we thought is after the people had finished Prototype 1, you'd built Alex Mercer up to a really incredible amount of power. So the question was, where do you go from that point? I mean, do you start the second game with Alex eating planets? You know, like...
Now again, listen with those two things on the side of your head before you tell me how bad this is to use. I heavily agree this heavily depends on if you take this statement at face value. If you do, great. If you don't, that's cool too. But it would be iniquitous of me not to include it regardless of how you or I feel about it. And the final meta. Again, if you've seen my James Heller video, you'd know exactly what it is and how I defend it, which is the star meta of Alex being able to move the sun. I'll go over briefly where these metas put Alex, and if you're wondering why is his section so much longer than Cole's already, and why we haven't even gone to the scaling, there is no diplomatic way to say this. Cole has practically nothing outside of what I stated for his position, or at least nothing good to use. Again, any lingering questions why I didn't use something or scale him to somebody will be in the miscellaneous portion of the video. For those of you familiar with my Alex and James videos, you'll likely see how I estimate their increase in strength through consumption. But for anyone new, here's a quick breakdown of the method I use. Essentially, I apply a 2x multiplier for each canonical evolved or black white creature that James consumes. A detailed list of these consumed creatures will be available in the description or the comment section. I'll find somewhere for it. Back on the topic. Why would he be getting a 2x increase off the evolved and black white creatures? The basis for the 2x increase comes from statements found in the Hunter's profile in Prototype 1's Primer Guide. Under the section Anomalies and the Obscured Classified Information, this entire section is filled with information regarding the true nature of every single major entity and character you interact with. Meaning everything in these profiles are absolutely true, meaning we cannot call the Hunter's profile or any other profile into scrutiny. The profile states that, if possible, they will kill and consume one another to grow in power and ability, and consume and incorporate other Hunters' powers into their own repertoire. This process allows them to keep up with the ever-evolving moving goalposts as Alex Mercer. In fact, their primary objective is to consume the prototype, meaning black-light creatures and the Evolved must be capable of matching Alex's continuously growing strength. Given these statements, applying a 2 times increase per consumption is fine and would even be a conservative estimate, especially considering how Alex can, over the course of the fight, get stronger than the Supreme Hunter, who is stated in both fights to be stronger than Alex when they occur. Evolution go burr, I guess. Furthermore, there are additional statements suggesting that black-light creatures grow in strength just by being in Alex's presence.
The other 2 factions are the Infected. The Infected, for some reason, are being driven or motivated, either to destroy him or capture him, he's not quite sure. But every time he interacts with them, they seem to grow stronger, they seem to grow more capable, they seem to take on more of his type of characteristics.
Given how much of a moving goalpost everyone is anyway, he could definitely be way higher than where I put him given all the evidence presented. Lastly, we need to factor in Alex's muscle mass ability before we move on to calculating his power, as this provides another significant boost to his power depending on how you choose to interpret the upgrades for muscle mass, as this could give him a 4, 6 or 8 times increase in strength depending on whether the upgrade stacks additionally or multiplicatively. So starting with the bomb meta, Rainer04 did a recalc of the bomb on the Versus wiki that got the bomb between 61.86 and 68.15 megatons. A link to the new calc will be in the description below. So after halving the results for the bomb meta and adding the consumption multipliers, now that I've recalced this meta again, muscle mass and all, Alex gets to small country to country level. With the cloud meta, Koenig did 2 different types of clouds for the calculation of this feat. He used Nimbostratus and Cumulonimbus clouds. For the Nimbostratus clouds after consumption boost, it got a final result of 6.48 petatons for the low ball. Then we had the muscle mass multiplier for the Nimbostratus clouds results, and we get 25.92 petatons for the 4 times multiplier and 41.99 petatons for the 8 times multiplier, which puts Alex Mercer at multi-continent level. While the Cumulonimbus clouds sit at 147.2 exatons, putting Alex at multi-continental. Then we add the 4 and 8 times multipliers, which puts Alex between 588.8 exatons and 1.17 zetatons, which puts him at small planet level. So the cloud meta isn't finished just yet, as Honecker, being a legend, found and calculated another cloud feat during the fight between Alex and James during the mission Murder Maker. A sudden rainstorm came out of nowhere and stops as soon as the fight ends, but the important part is we see a giant hole in the sky looking over Manhattan. Now, because we don't know if the hole was made during the fight or after consumption, I'll be showing off the full and half results of where the low and high balls sat, which would put Alex anywhere from large island to large planet.
I am the harbinger, sealing your fate. Watching from the shadows of fire in my claw, the crowd chases and march the wall. No mercy in my system, no soul to redeem. I am the nightmare from your darkest dream. Marching from the shadows with fire in my core, the ground shakes as I march to war. No mercy in my system, no soul to redeem. I am the nightmare from your darkest dream. I am the eviscerator machine of despair, tearing through your world without a single care. Ancient power, chaos divine, your blood will spill and your soul is mine. Through the smoke, my eyes burn red, a towering beast, leaving cities dead. A clockwork precision, a deadly design, each swing of my blade, a fatal
Now, how legit is this feat to use? Well, the fact that we have an in-game and cinematic cutscene showing it isn't good enough. How about Dan Jolly saying it's legit? Will that do you? Now, and I quote, yeah, games like Prototype 1 and Prototype 2 use a graphic called the skybox. It's essentially the image that attaches to the polygons you see when you look up whenever Alex uses his powers. It's a thing that was intended to happen, so it's legit. The last part is the real important part. As I said before, because we don't know if it was done by both or one of them, it's best if we half the results then use muscle mass. So halving it gets the results to 58.45 gigatons and 5.5 kilotons. Then adding the multipliers to the two ends gets it to 233.8 gigatons to 467.6 gigatons for the low end. And for the high end, 22 to 44 kilotons, which sits Alex around large island to dwarf star level. As for the planet meta, using the same calculation method as before, Alex can scale to large planet up to large star level, with his power ranging from 12.76 ronatons to 1.25. Once again, this is if you buy what was said at face value. If you do, cool. If you don't, I'm not going to fight you. Let me repeat that for the slow ones who didn't quite catch that. If you disagree, I will not fight you on it. I myself am not 100% sold on it, but it's something that should at least be mentioned. So agree or disagree, it does not matter to me. Now for the final meta, and the one lots of people hate, the star level meta. Again, I'll give you a super quick summary if you're not familiar. Alex with several of his weapon animations can move the sun, the speed varies from power to power, and doesn't work at night, so we know he's directly affecting the sun. All caught up? Super! Third, same as the first, we use the same scaling chain we did before pushes Alex to multi-galaxy level. Whether you classify it as AP or hacks, I don't give a rat's ass. It's a thing, it exists, and Alex has demonstrated the ability to do it. Hell, there is more than enough physical evidence for it. And before anyone rushes in with doubts, even Dan Jolly, the former president of Radical Entertainment, confirms it to be legit, as he says when asked about the legitimacy of the changing the weather and sun. I've already quoted this once before, but I shall do it again. And I quote, yeah, games like Prototype 1 and 2 use a graphic called the skybox. It's essentially the image that's attached to the polygons you see when you look up whenever Alex uses his powers. It's a thing that was intended to happen, so it's legit. So, there isn't really any debate anymore whether or not it's usable, so stick a ferret up your ass, I was right all along. Now that both sides have been laid out on the table, I think it's pretty cut and dry who's taking this category. With Cole having C to large mountain AP, but no attack, he can muster scales to it consistently enough. But let's say I granted the Ionic Storm that AP playing Devil's Advocate. It would only be applicable for the Ionic finishes and nothing else, as you can't quantify how much power is used for any bolt, grenade, shockwave, or rocket. Plus, the Ionic finishes use a different power source than the conventional techniques. When we look at Alex, even without the Cloud, Planet, or Star meta, he clearly doesn't need them. Alex demolishes Cole. The bomb meta alone sits him at country level compared to Cole's multi-sea block to small town scaling off his Ionic Storm thanks to the Primer Guide statements, which hurts my head in ways you can't possibly understand. But even granting him the C to large mountain AP, again. Being able to produce a storm, he gets outclassed by a devastating magnitude. Hell, even if you gave him the 2 times increase in power Cole would have received from the infamous route in the game, he would still sit at multi-city block 2 island level, which is still lower than Alex's lowest meta. Now let's talk about the star meta and the debate over whether it's a matter of hacks or AP. Honestly, it doesn't really matter which category it falls into, because either way, the feat remains valid either way. If he no longer has multi-galaxy level AP, then it just simply shifts to being multi-galaxy level hacks. Congratulations, he may not hit with that force anymore, but now his hacks have become devastatingly more potent. Now, I know you Infamous fans will try to dismiss the star meta as outlier, unusable, or just simply absurd gameplay mechanics. But let me tell you this for nothing, sunshine. Infamous is the last verse that should be debating the consistency of what counts as an outlier. Trust me, you don't want to go down that path when it comes to calling feats inconsistent or outlier, because your verse has its own fair share of questionable shit that no one seems to acknowledge. Like how the Storm feat scaling for Cole is widely accepted, while Alex's Cloud Star meta, which is arguably more consistent, is dismissed as absurd or outlier on the basis of people not believing he is capable of doing such a thing, when we see it with our own eyes. Explain to me why Cole, being able to produce a Storm with only 2 feats, is fine and tickety boo, but Alex, with way more than 2 feats, 7 or 8 in fact, gets denied both his Cloud and Star meta. Make that make sense outside of favoritism and bias towards Cole. Let's not forget the Ray Sphere scaling to sea level, which I will touch on in the miscellaneous section, and people accepting Cole having sea level durability just because he survived the Ray Sphere blast, even though that's extremely questionable, especially with evidence pointing to conduits being immune to the blast itself. But don't worry, I'll break that down further in the durability section. As I've said on streams and in my James Taylor video, my stance on outliers in the Versus community remains firm, but I'll reiterate, I don't buy into the conventional use of the term in power scaling. It's applied too inconsistently and varies depending on who's analysing which verse or character. There are characters who get away with blue murder based on 1 or 2 feats or statements, even if they stray far from what would normally be accepted. On the other hand, some characters require a mountain of evidence, and even then, people may still refuse to acknowledge a feats tier simply because they don't like them sitting there. If you feel like playing the outlier game, then you ultimately have conceded to something called preponderance of evidence. Preponderance of evidence is evidence-based standard that requires people to abide by a specific quantification of their evidence in order to prove their positions. As I've explained in my James Taylor video, I shall explain one last time here. What this means, very briefly, preponderance makes whatever the most consistent level of evidence that set the standard, hence the preponderance. That means taking the tier with the most feats in it and applying it to the character and saying this is where they sit. Example, let's say you had a character who had 10 town level feats, 5 planet feats, and 25 building feats. Where would they scale them? The correct answer is building, as that has the most feats in that tier. Even if the other two are consistent, they aren't the most consistent. Remember, when using the term outlier, this is the game you're playing. If you want to use a term meant for statistics, then I hope you're ready to play the statistic game. The term outlier in power scaling is obviously cherry picking, and it's a tool used to dismiss characters that people don't want to be at this certain tier. And watch, I'll go on to prove this awfully soon. I'll show you, you'll see. Ultimately, the game of preponderance of evidence makes the consistent tier is not one Infamous wants to play, especially when you're up against Prototype. But as the Evil Twins said,
oh, you wanna play mind games? Okay, tough guy. Let's play mind games.
I was paid enough to break it down and calculate how many feats each character has in each tier. Now, let's count how many Storm feats Cole has compared to Alex's Cloud Star meta. compared to 7 or 8. Surprise, surprise. Alex Cloud meta takes the lead with the Star meta not far behind. And guess what? It's still vastly more consistent than Cole's Storm Feat, which only has 2 feats. Only 2 feats! Oh, what's this? Shouldn't Cole's Storm Feat be considered an outlier and absurd? By all rights? Yes, it should. But no, because it's not Alex. Cole gets a pass. Well, I hate to break it to you, but if we're playing by the same rules, you should accept Alex's feat and reject Cole's. But infamous power scalers don't because they're disingenuous pieces of trash. Well, I don't care about dismissing feats as outliers as long as the character can perform the feat independently without help or outside amps. So, I accept both the Star and Storm metas with open arms. Why? Because I'm not a two-faced, disingenuous, hypocritical cocksucker. So here's the bottom line. If you accept Cole's 2 feats and deny Alex's 7+ feats, you're biased. Sorry, but you just are. If you believe in consistency, Alex's feat should pass with flying colours, while Cole's should be put underneath the microscope and scrutinised. But oh no, we can't do that to Prince Golden Nuts, can we? Now let me tell you something. Let me move on to the other ways the Cannibal Corpse, Alex Mercer, pulls ahead. You see, Alex's attack power, it ain't static. It won't stay where it started. Just take a look at his fights with the Supreme Hunter. Not once, but twice. That thing was stated to be stronger than Alex, and both times, what did Alex do? He got stronger over the course of the fight until he was able to take down that son of a bitch. Not once, but twice. That means Alex is consistently evolving, getting stronger with every second during a fight. So even if Cole started out as strong or even stronger than Alex, the reality is, Mercer's got the better odds. As the fight drags on, Alex would almost certainly eclipse him. So, I'm here to tell ya, the winner of the attack potency category, the undisputed moving goalpost, Alex Mercer. Now moving on to durability. This category overlaps a bit with the miscellaneous section, but that's unavoidable. I've mentioned this on stream before, but as power scalers, we tend to simplify things, lumping categories together to avoid bogging down the conversation with details. But it's time someone pointed out that durability isn't a one-size-fits-all deal. This applies not only just to durability, but also to speed, strength, and other aspects. But as for durability, let's break it down. Durability isn't just one type. You've got blunt force durability, explosion resistance, slashing, piercing, chemical resistance, you get the idea. So why does this matter? Because, for example, someone could survive a town-level punch or kick, but still be pierced by a regular bullet or blade. Does that mean that they don't have town-level durability? Absolutely not. It just means they're resistant to blunt force, but vulnerable to piercing attacks. The reason I bring this up is because this is going to affect both characters to a certain degree. Alright, let's dive into Cole's durability. And like I did with AP, I'm starting with him. But before we get into it, let's be real for a second. His durability? It's garbage. I'm not sugarcoating it. I'm not dressing it up in a nice little package. It's dog shit. And before any of you fanboys get your panties in a twist, just hear me out, goddammit. Cole's durability doesn't even come close to matching his AP. He's the very definition of a glass cannon. He has multiple statements and showings of being seriously injured and can be outrightly killed by an unlucky RPG blast and an exploding car, and his own goddamn grenades and rockets. It doesn't help that in Infamous 2, the dude barely survived a car crash and took him hours to crawl his ass back to fighting shape.
The pain of impact. God, it was like a small death. Couldn't do a damn thing as the militia carried Core away, but at least she was alive. Wolf, he was gone. And without him to guide me to more blast cores, I won't be far behind. Hell, at that point, just crawling my way into the storm drain was a trial.
At best, I'm being generous here, he's building level. That's based on surviving near a Reaper Sapper whose explosion is stated in the primary guide to hit up to 2 stories, but here's the kicker. If that same sapper detonates next to him, Cole's a dead man walking. So yeah, hate durability how you will. Oh, but what about the Raysphere feat? What about the Beast and Kessler? Wouldn't their AP tribute to his durability? So the quick answer is, hell no. So let's go through this piece by piece, and I need you all to use your ears and actually bloody listen. Starting with the Raysphere. Oh, by the way, this point doesn't just apply to Cole. By the way, this would also include any conduit. So people claim Cole should be sea level bare minimum of being in the epicenter of the Raysphere, which has a calculation on the Versus wiki. Now, I'll establish this now because I didn't think I had to, but I guess no one understands the Raysphere wasn't a bloody bomb, but a wave of radiation or energy. Take your pick. But before I move on to that, I'm going to nip this argument in the bud. But everyone calls it a blast argument. I have to inform people the term blast, while meaning a burst of air from an explosion, isn't the only contextual way we use the word. We've also used it for practically anything that hits with significant force, whether this be air, water, or whatever else you want to substitute it with. So this argument doesn't work. Okay, so how do I know it's radiation or energy wave? Through contextual evidence given by the series.
Well, according to Wolf's analysis, the plague it's caused by radiation poisoning. Rayfield radiation.
The beast has powers similar to the Raysphere as stated in 2's primer guide, and as shown by the scan, it's an energy wave. The problem is Cole would be immune to the blast. Now why is that? It's because conduits have shown that if you have that DNA, you'll be left completely fine. We have several examples like Cole, David, Nix, Bertrand, the Plague Ward Woman, a rat, and other miscellaneous animals Kessler probably worked on.
They had the power to kill. And the power to transform some of us into conduits too. I found another survivor.
John transferred his powers into me and then he just let go. The blast was devastating, but worth it. New conduits had been activated. All of them healed of the plague.
The connecting tissue for all of them, including the animals, is that they all have the conduit gene, and as stated in game by Quo, conduits are immune to the plague, which is just radiation poisoning, and John shows that at the Plague Ward, the only things that survived his power, which is stated in the infamous 2 Primer Guide to be the same kind of power as the Raysphere, was Cole and the Plague Ward conduit. But he was burned and injured after the blast and won. He is burnt and has lacerations all over his body. Shouldn't that indicate it should be durability? No, it wouldn't, as this would be fantastic heat resistance, but being burnt and having cuts means nothing, as intense heat can onset those conditions. It's not really fair to assume it was the blast that did it. Cole even states himself in the infamous 1 instruction manual, so why am I alive? How did I escape unscathed? Ah! But he was limping! Cole must have been mistaken. So would I if I had just awoken from a point-blank blast and was disorientated. But the guidebook says he was burnt and bleeding. As I said before, heat tends to do that. And if we go by the comic, or as shown in Infamous 2's cutscene, he was completely fine and uninjured, which is the most consistent interpretation of those events. But Kessler was worried Cole would die, and as he should be, as he's never properly field tested the device before. Before then, it's only ever been used in small-scale local tests in a lab. On top of that, Kessler is hoping 60 plus years of research and waiting wasn't just pissed up a tree by accidentally killing Cole. Now let's go over John's work. John was ripped apart when the Raysphere imploded on itself, so this must prove it scales to durability. Frankly, Nix and David would stand to disagree. Right, so this is the point I know I'm going to have to walk people through because they just don't quite get it. Firstly, who is John White? John is the Beast. And what are the Beast's powers? Atomic manipulation. So what can he do with it? He can rip people apart on the atomic level and put himself back together on that same level. Meaning when he says the Raysphere tore him apart, it's most likely him not being able to control his powers, and that led to him being torn apart. Well, how can I come to that conclusion? Because of 2 things. The overwhelming preponderance of evidence that the Raysphere doesn't harm conduits, and second, The fact conduits in the beginning of gaining their powers have a hard time of controlling their abilities. With the addition of the Beast Atomic Manipulation means the obvious conclusion is he just couldn't control his powers, and thus not a durability feat for Cole for being able to survive it. But let's say the Ray Sphere did harm John and had nothing to do with his powers. Fine, it'd be a one-off thing for John only, as the overwhelming preponderance of evidence points to the Ray Sphere not being able to harm conduits. You can't just cherry-pick John's situation and ignore all the other conduits who walked away unscathed. All signs point to the fact that Cole's survival was due to his conduit DNA, not his durability. And finally, the blast shard bomb argument. They are bombs armed with blast shards scattered throughout the Sea of Nimue, and Cole can be hurt by them. My counter argument is that this is an explosive device that is powered by a blast shard to give it more power, meaning he isn't taking a radiation blast like from the Ray Sphere, but instead a highly powered up explosive device, so again, no dice. So now that I've established clearly that the Ray Sphere is a radiation wave and conduits are immune to that kind of radiation, you can't make the argument he'd get durability from it, as you can't grant someone durability of something they're immune to. Now, casting our gaze at the competition, there is something that needs to be tackled, which is his durability regarding the bomb that was going to take out Manhattan. So as the story goes, Alex saves Manhattan by taking the bomb far enough from land that not even the fallout reached the city, but resulted in him getting blasted to pieces. So people will claim Alex is a glass cannon due to the fact he couldn't tank the bomb's nuclear blast. But there is a problem with this line of thinking, as it doesn't take into account a few very important things. One, of the different kinds of durability there are. Second, the Supreme Hunter's statement and what that means for Alex during the events of 2. And thirdly, statements about Goliaths and what that gives Alex. As I've mentioned at the beginning of this very long-winded category, there are different kinds of durability. The reason this matters to Alex because there is a common misconception that Alex has poor durability simply because he wasn't left in one piece after the nuclear assault. And yes, that is a Frashmallow reference, good spotting. But let me clarify why that assumption isn't quite accurate. We've let this misunderstanding slide for far too long. People don't fully grasp how these categories work. Now, I'm not going to harp on or retread old ground. I've already explained at the start that there are different types of durability. This matters for Alex because, for instance, he can tank hits from the Supreme Hunter. Now let's cover what the Supreme Hunter said and what this means for Alex going forward during the events of Prototype 2. I'll let the entire scene play in full so no one thinks I took anything out of context or cherry-picked.
When the weapon detonates and they think the infection is cleansed, they won't be looking for me. And when I consume you, I'll be able to withstand even this.
So the Supreme Hunter clearly confirms he would have been able to withstand the bomb after he absorbed Alex. That would mean Alex by proxy would also scale to the bomb to a certain extent. As for the statement to be true, he would need to be half as powerful, if not more so, than that of the power of the bomb, which isn't unreasonable to ascertain, as Alex was weaker than him at the start of the fight, then got strong enough to kill him, on top of the black light creatures getting stronger in Alex's presence.
But every time he interacts with them, they seem to grow stronger, they seem to grow more capable, they seem to take on more of his type of characteristics.
The fact that Alex survived it all with any trace of his matter remaining is good, because just like James, and how he became resistant to being lethally burnt once and became immune to gunfire, Alex too would share the same super quick and aggressive adaptation, meaning the heat and blast force from the nuke would most assuredly not do anywhere near the same level of damage, if at all, if he was to encounter it again, meaning his adaptation would now allow him to tank the blast. It matters not what or how you try to interpret the scene and the facts of the situation. Alex scales to the bomb either because he adapts to reach a level of power afterwards since he was exposed to that level of energy and power, or because he consumes enough biomass later on, he reaches beyond that level the Supreme Hunter was talking about, which is consistent, but I'll keep that in my back pocket for the final argument. To argue he just got blasted apart, lol, before he doesn't scale is such a bad faith argument and garbage evaluation of the scene and the evidence in question. Now, I know there are people who will say, but the Supreme Hunter was contradicted because Alex didn't take the bomb. If that's what you're thinking, let me ask you a quick question. Are you deaf, dumb, or just fucking stupid? I can't believe I have to hold your hand through this one. But fine, let's go over it one more time from the top. What does the Supreme Hunter actually say? He says, after consuming you, I can withstand even this. Let's break this down because clearly some of you have missed some of the key points here. Firstly, Alex, who has first-hand knowledge of the bomb's power after consuming Peter, Randall, and Taggart, doesn't correct the Supreme Hunter or tell him he's wrong. Additionally, the Supreme Hunter consumed Robert Cross, Peter Randall's right-hand man, who would also know exactly how powerful the bomb was. So the Supreme Hunter, after coming from and fighting Alex the first time, would know exactly how strong he is and how quickly he adapts, as Alex became strong enough to turn him into a puddle given this. The Supreme Hunter has no reason to lie about being able to tank the bomb after consuming Alex, especially when he has accurate knowledge of both the bomb's power and Alex's capabilities. Secondly, Alex not tanking the bomb isn't grounds for a contradiction. For there to be a contradiction, a specific condition must be met, and it hasn't been. Let me spell it out for you. The Supreme Hunter's claim would only be contradicted if Alex consumed him and then was taken out by the bomb, but since Alex didn't consume him, the conditions for withstanding the blast weren't met. People are assuming that just because Alex didn't tank the bomb, the Supreme Hunter's claims are false. That's putting the cart before the horse. Without Alex absorbing him, there is no contradiction. Thirdly, and you can take this one as you will, this one's just a bonus point. The final mission is the only one where if you fail, it doesn't say Alex died, it just says mission failed. You can interpret this as meaning Alex survived, though it's just a softer argument compared to the others. Still, it's worth considering and pointing out. Are you still not convinced that after all these points Alex scales to and above the bomb? Fine, I've got one last argument. If you don't buy after this next point, then you dropkicks are beyond help. Let's talk about the Goliaths. Goliaths, as stated in the Prototype 2 guidebook, cannot be defeated by conventional means. It must be taken apart piece by piece. So that means we can take this two different ways. The first is that the Goliaths are incredibly durable, capable of withstanding anything Blackwatch can throw at them. While Blackwatch's standard arsenal includes guns, shells, missiles, and access to thermonuclear weaponry, including the same type of bomb used in Prototype 1. Now you might think, but a nuke isn't conventional weaponry. Normally you'd be right, but in this case, the term conventional depends heavily on the faction in question. For Blackwatch, thermonuclear weapons are well within their standard arsenal. They've demonstrated time and again that they have easy access to such weapons, as seen with the tank, the bomb on the USS Reagan, the Erasure of Hope, Idaho, and the nuclear missile silo for Project Firehawk. Blackwatch operates with more authority than even the US government. This reveals two things. First, Blackwatch doesn't need the government's permission to deploy nuclear weapons, and second, the nukes are a standard part of their toolkit. Circling back to the Goliaths, they should be capable of tanking the nuke from Prototype 1, which sat around 61 to 68 megatons. But why am I talking about them in the first place? Because Alex Mercer is significantly stronger than they are. The Prototype 2 Primer Guide describes him as the pinnacle of evolution, and undisputably the most powerful of the infected with the virus. Furthermore, Alex can go toe-to-toe with James Heller, who has killed and consumed multiple Goliaths himself. By the events of Prototype 2, it's beyond doubt that Alex would be able to withstand the same bomb, given that he has surpassed the power of the Goliaths. There is also a second way you can take it, and it's a hell of a lot more frightening than the former. The second part of the Goliath's description makes it sound like it could just straight up take blows from James, and needs to be weakened before being killed. Let me remind you where James would approximately get to without taking into consideration of the consumption amps. He would be sitting bare minimum between C to star level depending on the meta you choose to accept. This means Goliaths can tank this range of attack and Alex would reign above them, meaning he too can tank this level of power, further proving after the events of 1, there's no valid argument to suggest that Alex could be hurt or killed by the bomb. In conclusion, without taking consumption amps into account, Alex Mercer would sit anywhere from C to star level based on his fight with James Heller. However, when we factor in the consumption amps, Alex's power skyrockets, placing him between small country to multi-galaxy level, again depending on what meta you choose to accept. What to say without doing a bit of backtracking to attack potency or infringing on the next category. I'd love to stretch this out, make it seem like it's a remotely closer contest, but I just can't. Alex's durability towers head and shoulders above Cole's by an absurd margin, especially because unlike Cole and inFAMOUS in general, Alex doesn't have anything contradicting his AP and durability being the same. And since I need to touch on attack potency and adaptation for this section, it's worth pointing out that Cole's multi-city block to large mountain AP doesn't even come close to scratching Alex's lower stand durability. On the flip side, Alex's AP easily overwhelms Cole's durability. While on adaptation side, even if I granted Cole his very generous interpretation of large mountain level, he has literally one shot to put Alex down, otherwise as shown with how quickly James adapts, Alex will just become heavily resistant if not immune to electricity and ice, making Cole's entire arsenal useless. I wish I had a clever way to wrap this up, but it's pretty straightforward. The winner, without question, is Alex. The speed category shall be broken down into two different sections, travel and reaction. So like the other two categories before it, I'll be starting off with Cole. In terms of travel speed, Cole's best feat placed him around the superhuman to subsonic range depending on how generous you are. This is based on his speed being slower than a city train, which typically doesn't reach top speeds within the city limits due to frequent stops and speed limits. Trust me, as an Aussie that has to travel around Sydney for work, I know the pain of speed limits. But I digress. If Cole can maintain the top speed of a train in America, he would be matching the Acela, which would put him in the subsonic range. As disappointing as his travel speed is, his reaction speed on the other hand is the opposite. It's quite good. Especially since he has multiple feats that would put him at light speed, or vaguely over using a few metrics like Kessler's railgun, Quo and the Ice Titan's Ice Beam, and the beam from the RFI when you fight Nix in the infamous route of Infamous 2. Now breaking these down individually, let's start with Kessler. The infamous 1 primer guide explicitly states that Kessler's railgun attack fires a beam of pure energy. Pure energy moves at the speed of light. The guide also says Cole can dodge the beam itself, so these facts alone give us a solid benchmark for Cole's ability to react to light speed attacks. While some might mistakenly label this attack as lightning due to its appearance, the official guide confirms it to be a beam of energy, not lightning, so please stop calling it lightning for fuck's sake. I don't care if it looks like lightning, it's a beam of pure energy. Need more evidence? Fine, let's go. Secondly, both Quo and the Ice Titans fire beams of sub-zero radiation. By definition, a beam of radiation travels at light speed, as radiation is simply energy moving in a straight line. And third and lastly, as stated earlier with the ray sphere, the anti-ray sphere, the RFI, emits a beam of radiation. The ray sphere and RFI are repeatedly described as being radioactive. Since radiation moves at the speed of light, Cole's ability to counter or react to the RFI's beam in the final confrontation with Nix indicates he can handle light speed attacks. With these consistent examples, whether it's Kessler's railgun, Quo, and the Ice Titan's Ice Beams, or the RFI, Cole's reaction speed undoubtedly consistently reaches light speed. In conclusion, while Cole's travel speed is subsonic, his reaction speed is vastly superior, consistently reaching light speed. Now moving on to Alex's travel speed. Before we start, let me just say that the consumption boost applied to speed, not just strength, so I'll be using the chain 4 amps as well as muscle mass being stated to be a speed boost as well as a strength boost. So that will be also taken into consideration for the end result. Now onto the scaling. We can confidently scale him to well above light speed through several key factors, like his ability to react and outpace Elizabeth Green's infection energy wave in base, and not even including the 4 to 8 times increase to his speed via muscle mass. If you're familiar with my prototype scaling, you'll already understand why this feat qualifies as light speed, but I'll break it down again here and provide additional evidence to further solidify the argument. First, let's look at the infectious wave of energy. The wave unleashed by Elizabeth Green is described as energy, and Dan confirms what I've been saying all along, it's pure energy. We have another example with the Medusa's Wrath, which is literally called the laser, and Black Light can produce its own radio signals as they recreate everything they consume, and we see in several cutscenes James recreates walkie-talkies and Riley's phone. While Black Light has also been shown to mess with technology like how it messed with the camera, with the addition of the muscle mass amps and scaling to James, there shouldn't be any doubt whatsoever now that Alex is above the speed of light. But to what extent does he get over? So I hold the notion whether or not he could have won before the fight with the Goliath in the green zone, Alex sees James as a threat enough not to try and kill him at that moment. So even if James would have lost if they fought, he would have been comparable enough to Alex during that point in the game. So James should be light speed, and James consumes several evolve that can keep up with him before his final fight with Mercer. The calculation I got for James before he consumed Alex got him to 53,760 times the speed of light. Now during the fight he can easily keep up with Hela and arguably still be physically faster than him, putting Alex's travel speed at the same speed as James, and when we add the muscle mass amps, getting Mercer's final total to 215,040 or 430,080 times the speed of light. Keep in mind, because both of them are moving goalposts, this could be very wrong and could be vastly higher. But what if I told you that there was an even faster meta we could use? The meta I'm talking about is the lightning meta. So as it goes, Goliaths can attack with lightning fast attacks. Now James can physically outrun a Goliath even without being infected. No AMs, nothing. Once infected and getting a ton of consumption buffs, Alex during the Murder Your Maker boss fight is potentially still physically faster than James, so using the scaling metaphor gets him to, you can go to hell and eat my ass on the way down. I am not fucking reading that. And on top of his 4 to 8 times multiplier, again, I'm just going to put these on the screen. I am not fucking reading these. It's my video, I get to be fucking lazy. Let's shift gears and talk about Mercer's reaction speed. His best reaction feat is when he consumes Elizabeth Green, absorbing all her knowledge. This is crucial because according to her character profile in the Primer Guide, Green possesses an intellect that spans billions of years. In fact, Blacklight itself is described as the force that kickstarted evolution. This means she carries around 3.7 billion years of accumulated knowledge, and Alex gained all of that in a second, maybe even less. We've seen time and again that when Alex consumes people, he instantly gains their knowledge, as demonstrated in both Stealth Consumes and the comics. Before I break down the calculation, let's quickly address a few common counter-arguments. The first one of the arguments I keep hearing is that the time it takes for the cutscene to play when Alex consumes someone is how long it takes for him to process the memories. I have many words about this, none of them are good. If you believe that, then I'm sorry, but you're fucking thick. Alex is out here processing somebody's entire life in a second or two, and you think we should use the length of a damn cutscene to estimate how long it takes? If you've already agreed he's processing someone's whole life in a short time, whether that's seconds or minutes, then why would we assume the cutscene is in real-time reflection of his ability? You wouldn't. You've already shot yourself in the foot with this nonsense. The way you measure it is by how long he is stuck in the idle animation. When you cut out the cutscene, it gets down to about a second, maybe 3 at most. Hell, you can argue it's even faster if you took Stealth Consumes, or what he pulls off in the comic. So don't come at me with this weak ass argument, you're just making yourself look foolish. Now let's talk about the second argument that needs to be addressed that people throw around, that reaction speed should be different from perception speed. People in the community treat perception feats as inferior to reaction. Now to be fair, in some selected cases, that is true, but not all the time for every verse. This is something that needs to be addressed by a case-by-case basis. And like I said in my James Heller video, perception and reaction speed should be treated as the same thing until proven otherwise. You don't start from a point of doubt, you need evidence to prove they're different, and with Alex, there's none. So unless someone can show me a legitimate reason why Mercer's perception and reaction are separate, this argument holds zero weight. The third argument is that there is nothing in the games or comics which shows this level of speed. This is a nothing argument that borders on calling feats presented as outliers. I'll spare you and not go over that again. But in regards to whether or not there is a feat, there is. Green's Viral Shockwave, which is stated to be infectious energy. I've already covered this ad nauseum. Why this is pure energy with Occam's Razor and Medusa's Wrath. With this much evidence, if you're still not convinced, there is nothing I can do for you. Now that's out of the way, I had Hanukkah redo the calculation after being informed I got the calculation wrong, so I must apologize. Apparently I stand guilty of a crime of misleading information. I stand guilty of downplaying the feat. When Hanukkah recalculated, the lowball result was 118.63 million, while the highball result reached 389 million times the speed of light, putting Alex's reaction speed at massively faster than light plus. This isn't just some random number either. The calculation is rooted in explicit law from the Primer Guide under the section Anomalies and the Obscure Classified Information. This entire section is filled with the information regarding the true nature of every single major entity and character you interact with, meaning everything in these profiles are absolutely true, meaning we cannot call any information in the profile into scrutiny, as I have repeated ad nauseum for any of these videos I use this in. In terms of going over the verdict, what's there to say in terms of speed? Alex demolishes pretty straightforward. Alex is operating in a completely different league. It's not even in the same level of discussion. Now, if you want to talk about reaction speed, it's a little better, but it's still pretty bad. Cole's clocking in at light speed while Alex, on the low end, is hitting 118 to 389 times light speed. To put it simply, Alex is so far in ahead that Cole wouldn't even see his death coming. So what else is there to cover? Even if we were to cap Alex at light speed or just lightning timing, this would still be pretty rotten for Cole, as none of his attacks would be fast enough to hit him, as lightning has a set speed unless shown otherwise, as I know certain verses have lightning users that can hit people with electricity that move faster than lightning. But nonetheless, Cole isn't one of them, unfortunately. So the speed category goes to the extremely speedy dead fella. So moving on to the hacks category, I'll be simply comparing their powers and seeing what powers can counter what, etc, etc, while also giving my thoughts on what powers work on which character and why. So starting off with regular bolts versus armor and shield. Cole has a cornucopia of different bolts, but for the most part they all do the same thing with just slightly different gimmicks, like the artillery bolt and pincer bolt for examples. So how would these different types of bolts work against Alex? I'm not going to be dipping into adaptation just yet, that comes later. So without considering adaptation, does Alex have a way of getting past Cole's bolts? Strangely enough, yes, depending on how you want to view it. There is a number of corrupted in Infamous 2 that have carapaces that can deflect the bolts themselves, like the Ravagers and Devourers. So why does this matter for Alex? Well, because Alex can pretty much do what they can do with his shield and armor. There isn't anything particularly special said about the carapaces of the corrupted, so if this is just a matter of density, then we can make the argument Alex's shield and armor could potentially block and bounce the bolts away, making Cole's most versatile type of power redundant. If you so happen to disagree with this point, don't just bitch, moan and whinge and say that they're not the same. Prove to me that they're not the same, otherwise shut up. Now moving on to regenerations and negations. When it comes to regeneration between the two, Alex has higher and faster regeneration, as he has low, high to high regeneration depending on two things. One, if you believe like I do that Alex can regenerate from a single molecule, to truly kill the Blacklight virus, you must destroy all traces at the molecular level, as Alex can manipulate his molecules and infect on that scale, so he should be able to regenerate on that level. Or, alternatively, if you accept that Alex can manipulate his atoms and recreate all manner of goodies like glass, metal, and radio waves, yes, radio waves, as he can make fully functional walkie-talkies and phones, would allow him to regenerate on that level. Whereas Cole has mid-low to high-low regeneration, being able to shake off gunfire of all calibers, and as I pointed out in my Cole video, Cole doesn't have mid-low regeneration. Cough cough versus wiki cough cough, you bullshit artists. As comparing his regeneration to that of the mutated Ice Titans is a false equivalency, as Cole isn't shown or stated to have the same kind of regenerational properties as them. Not to mention they continuously mutate, which strengthens them and gives them new abilities compared to the regular Mercs to the Titans. You tell me if those South Africans are the same. This would be like saying John and Cole are both conduits, so Cole should be able to regenerate just as well as the Beast, or even trying to say that Cole's regeneration should scale to Delsin's high regeneration without anything backing it up aside from both of them just being conduits. Which is just a weak argument. Now I mentioned Alex's regeneration was faster. What a lot of people don't understand is how fast it truly is. We have two feats we can look at. For the first one, let's look at Alex after the bomb. After consuming a tiny bit of biomass, he rebuilt his body that was blown apart in seconds. But Barrow, you fool, that's not conventionally what he can regenerate from. He needed help from the COVID. My. Are you sure about that? Well, for the second piece of evidence, let me show you the Supreme Hunter, who without biomass regenerated from a blood puddle. Now yes, we don't see the whole process, but from how quickly he regenerated his hand, we can say at worst, little over a minute. As for Cole, he can recover quickly from gunshots, yes, but anything stronger like a car crash and it takes him hours to get back in the fighting shape. Now while Cole can resurrect himself, that gets negated by Alex's regen negation, which segues well into this topic. While both have regen negation, Alex's is far higher than Cole's, as the best Cole can negate is low mid regeneration, as he can kill the Ice Titans, while Alex being able to cancel out and kill the Evolved and the Supreme Hunter puts his at low high to high regeneration negation. Now going over resistance negation. This was a point that Mangler wanted me to address, so I'm just going to say what he gave me. Difference between resistance negation and adaptation is that resistance negation allows Alex to completely shut down a given resistance to something in your physiology, whereas adaptation is just Alex evolving to you over time and changing his physiology to match your abilities and potentially create more powerful abilities than what you can resist. Resistance negation is like an offensive setup for absorbing people in the effect that their body decides not to be affected by a particular ability. Thank you, Mr. Mangler, for making my video just a little bit longer. Now moving on to radar pulse versus disguise. The next comparison is one that I have had completely done a 180 on. Originally, I did agree radar pulse would counter Alex's disguise ability. I thought it would allow him to just distinguish between him and normal citizens, but I had to have a think about what radar pulse is and how it works. Radar pulse functions like electromagnetic echolocation by sending a pulse of electricity. He is able to tell what has electricity in his immediate vicinity and who is alive or dead by reading their bioelectricity. The reason why I'm explaining how it works is due to how I came to my conclusion on how it wouldn't work against Alex. Now, credit where credit is due, I had a discussion with Mr. Mangler about this topic, and he made a rather convincing argument that because Alex isn't technically alive, he wouldn't be producing bioelectricity, so Cole wouldn't be able to find him. The next power to address is Alex's adaptation versus Cole's lightning and ice. This should be a relatively quick section, so as I went over before, James was able to adapt from being fatally burnt after a single exposure. So it should stand to reason Alex should be able to do the same for electricity and Sub-Zero ice. To back this up, Alex has already taken hits from across a stun baton, which would have given him a jump start in resistance to that element. This is also backed up by the fact that during the mission The Mad Scientist, James destroyed live transformers, and given his previous encounter with the nuke's heat, the heat of Cole's electricity shouldn't be too much for him to handle. And even if we were to take into consideration the heat of the ionic storm, that isn't even close to reach the same temperature that would be needed to harm Alex. As well as in the comic, being in the freezing snow, he should already have a pre-established resistance to the cold. Granted, it isn't Sub-Zero resistance, but it's a start. Alex is also able to adapt and make hundreds of new strains a day, and those strains make hundreds, etc, etc. This is how he's able to adapt so quickly. So given this, Cole has one shot at best from each of his powers to take down Alex, otherwise he'll just adapt to it. And because Cole is a mid-range pot shotter, he wouldn't know to start off with his strongest attack, and even if he did, as by the events of Prototype 2, Alex contains the bomb, Cole's ionic storm wouldn't even be strong enough to put him down anyway. Something to mention, the Black Light virus from which Alex gains his powers is the progenitor of all life on the planet. This means any adaptation that allows life forms to survive extreme conditions, including sub-zero temperatures, would be accessible to Alex. Many Arctic animals such as polar bears, snow leopards, and snowy owls possess natural traits for thriving in sub-zero environments. Even more extreme organisms like tardigrades can survive temperatures close to absolute zero. With access to the biology and traits of hundreds, if not thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of species, sub-zero temperatures would pose no real threat to Alex, and even if they did, his rapid rate of adaptation would make it a non-factor. This is also assuming that Cole would lead with his ice powers right from the start. Now moving on to consumption. When it comes to Alex's ability to consume opponents, some argue that he wouldn't be able to consume Cole for various reasons, such as needing to weaken him first or Cole's unique biology interfering with the process. Let's start by addressing the misconception that Alex must weaken his opponents to consume them. This only applies to the Black Light infected creatures like the Hunters and Alpha Hunters, who resist assimilation due to the fact that they're resisting his assimilation due to evolution. Most other characters and creatures that can't resist assimilation would be instantly consumed by Alex, as shown in the comic. Alex is essentially a giant walking stomach, similar to the Pillar Man from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but even faster. If Alex gets even a single touch, even a fingernail on Cole, it's game over. Cole has shown no significant resistance to this kind of assimilation, even if you argue that Cole wasn't turned by Bertrand's behemoth gas chest thing. This doesn't hold up since Bertrand is nowhere near as powerful as Alex. Alex's overwhelming strength would bypass any resistance Cole might have, leading to his immediate consumption. In essence, Alex doesn't need to wear Cole down. His sheer power and ability to assimilate anyone not equipped to resist the Black Light virus means that if he gets close enough, Cole would be consumed in an instant. Now let's look into the often overlooked ability of Alex, his capacity to duplicate himself. Dennis Detweiler in an interview explicitly mentions this, stating, "All in all, this is the single most requested feature for multiplayer, co-op, and we don't have any of the conceptual problems of having two Alexes. He is, after all, a shapeshifter who has absolute control of his genetic structure. All he needs to do is grow a duplicate." If you thought one Alex was bad to deal with, if he felt the need, he could create a whole army of himself, but let's say one for the bare minimum. Now, you might think this was only mentioned as a concept for gameplay purposes, and there's no real support for it in the actual story. And how utterly wrong you would be. Remember, Alex's powers stem from the Black Light virus, the progenitor of all life on Earth. The natural world is full of organisms with the ability to clone or duplicate themselves. Single-celled organisms like bacteria, amoeba, and yeast often replicate themselves through a process such as binary fission or budding, perfectly mirroring themselves. Fauna like starfish, planarian worms, sea anemones, jellyfish, sponges, and Hydra can do it through various means. And a variety of different flora via different methods like cuttings, bulbs, and nodes like Haiku, citrus trees, aspen trees, bamboo, and any succulents. Garlic, onion, lantana, blackberry, I'm not done, just proving a point. Gorse, prickly pear, salvia, dandelion, and wandering dew. This isn't just about simple organisms either, plants and animals alike have evolved these survival mechanisms. And as Alex has access to their genetic potential, he can use these traits to clone himself at will. And if he wanted to, he could even reproduce asexually, tapping into biology of creatures capable of doing so. Alex's potential to duplicate himself is entirely consistent with the powers granted by the Black Light virus, making this an incredibly dangerous yet underappreciated aspect of his abilities. If Cole was already struggling to keep up with one Alex, how would he even fare if there was just a second one he could tag team with? And if he wanted, he could have a Royal Rumble amount of Alex's dogpiling Cole at any given moment, that all have the same stats and abilities as the original. All hail how broken nature truly is. Another underappreciated ability is his death manipulation via Medusa's Wrath, but DLC isn't canon. Yeah, I'll get to that in the miscellaneous section. Alex fires a laser that can kill on contact. Is Cole completely screwed in this regard? Surprisingly, no, he isn't, as both his Polarity Wall and Ice Shield would be able to block and absorb energy from the laser, as Cole has demonstrated with Kessler in one's guidebook, and with the ice conduits he can absorb pure energy. And now for the but. There is always a but. There is an aspect we should address. Elizabeth Green can fire an infection wave of energy, meaning the potential argument is there that because they can fire infected energy, they can infect energy itself. Which, if that's the case, Cole has just signed a twofold death warrant, as he died due to either contact with the shield infecting it on contact and spreading it to Cole, or by absorbing infected energy and giving the black light a way into his body. This category goes to either depending on which side of the fence you wish to sit on, but it would be wrong of me to not at least explain this. He should be capable of adding death manipulation to any of his energy attacks, including the orbs and infection wave, also technically to his regular attacks too, but it's easier just to assume only the energy based ones will get this effect. Now moving on to summoning. Alex has the ability to summon a variety of black light creatures to aid him in combat, such as swarms of birds, brawlers, juggernauts, hydras, and even Goliaths. This isn't mere speculation, but it's strongly supported by his role as the leader of the Black Light virus, Hive Mind, which gives him control over all infected creatures. He should, in theory, be able to summon and command all of them at will. This creates a massive problem for Cole, who would already be struggling to take on Alex by himself. Now imagine him facing not just Alex, but an entire army of pissed off pets that could be near Alex's level of strength. These creatures could also attack simultaneously, creating overwhelming pressure and leaving Cole with almost no opportunity to focus solely on Alex. And that's not even considering the possibility of Alex duplicating himself, further stacking the odds in his favour, and that duplication summoning an army. Now going over infection versus body heat argument. This next one is an argument that has really given me the shits of late, and that people claim that even if Cole was infected, he could burn the virus away, as his body would be producing electricity, making the inside of his body too hot for the virus to inhabit. Where do I fucking begin? I guess by saying if you legitimately believe this argument, you're fully taking the piss. To even assert this, you have to have more proof than he just makes electricity. You have to be able to prove his internal temperature skyrockets due to his power, and I think a lot of people don't seem to understand. If he is as hot as you claim, his external temperature would also be melting everything around him. This argument is also heavily assuming Cole could somehow burn away the Black Light virus. A virus that survived the heat of a nuclear explosion. The outer edges of a nuke vaporizes people instantly, and yet Alex's biomass wasn't charred. The notion that Cole could raise his body's internal body temperature to a level that could damage the Black Light virus is absurd, especially considering Alex's rapid adaptation. Even if Cole could somehow generate that level of heat, Alex would adapt to cancel out any damage, rendering the argument a moot point. Even if Cole could fight the infection, Alex can incite any ailment known to man and make more devastating ones on the fly, meaning he'll be racing against the microsecond clock to not be killed by a flood of ailments once infected. Now going over invulnerability, Alex can enter a state of temporary invulnerability when critically injured, so even if people try to argue Cole could one-shot him, his temporary invulnerability would kick in, stopping this. Polarity. Actually, funny enough, Cole has a very interesting win con no one has ever brought up. Cole's polarity power could work perfectly against Alex, as Alex has consumed over 1,000 people, and that much accumulated iron would make him severely susceptible to magnetism, as Alex would have more iron in his body than the mines in Western Australia's Hemsley Province mine. And finally, the last power, time manipulation. Cole can slow the flow of time with his precision ability, and while this seems like a very nice counter to Alex's ridiculous speed, it's also Cole's biggest weakness. If he uses it, as this devours electricity, making Cole's limited supply of power dwindling even faster than it would normally, I don't think the trade-off of Cole being a glorified sniper compared to energy depletion during the fight is worth the risk, so this win con can also be his biggest unintentional fault. Sidebar, being a pain in the ass to myself for later on. There was a power I didn't address for Alex that may influence the result, maybe not, maybe it's just a little bit of cool trivia. But Dennis Detweller in a Twitter post does confirm that Alex can assimilate anything. So this basically means that if Alex is down on his luck and he needs to consume something, he's not just limited to biomass, he could, I guess, eat the tar or concrete, or even the rubbish from a bin, like a fucking bin chicken. Yeah, cool new information. Maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. Back to the video. Right, now going over the verdict, I know this looks extremely balanced, but it is what it is unfortunately. Whether you like it or not, there really isn't any hacks Cole has that would directly impact Alex besides from polarity. So as it stands, I'll put who won which category, just for a brief reminder on the screen otherwise. Now we have reached the miscellaneous section of the video, where I'm going to go over the questions that I've heard and been provided by others and answer them. Now some of these will most probably retread ground I've said for certain points, but it's still worth going over I believe. Now let's start with alternate timelines and differences between Cole and Kessler. There are key differences between Kessler and Cole that highlight the variability between alternate versions of the same character in the infamous universe, despite them being technically the same person. Firstly, Kessler is notably taller than Cole. Some fans try to explain this by claiming that Kessler's height difference is due to technology or something he wears, but this is an assumption with no evidence to support it. The idea that Kessler might have moon boots or some special gear that makes him taller is unfounded speculation. Without any clear confirmation, the simplest explanation is that in the multiverse of Infamous, conduits like Kessler can have different physical traits from their alternate selves. Secondly, the most significant difference is their powers. According to the Infamous 1 guidebook, Kessler's attacks are all energy based, whereas Cole's powers center around electricity. This is a major deviation and illustrates how in alternate universes conduits can possess entirely different abilities. It underscores the point that just because Cole and Kessler are alternate versions of the same person, their abilities are not necessarily linked. If anyone tries to claim that Kessler does fire lightning due to what the railgun attack looks like in the game, that's all they have is visuals, when the guidebook flat out tells us it's a beam of pure energy and most of his attacks are energy. The guidebook is also hyper-specific when it talks about powers. An argument came up that Kessler had electricity when he was younger and it evolved into energy. This is a ridiculous argument founded on nothing but visuals, and as going by the primer guide, regardless if Kessler looks like he is using electricity, it's most probable that it's actually pure energy. In the series, we've never seen a conduit's powers evolve into something else, we've only seen conduits gain new ones. To add a little extra credence to the argument, while it's not Cole being used as the example, it works all the same. The stark difference between John's beast and Kessler's beast: in Kessler's timeline, the beast has extraordinary powers like raiding volcanoes and shattering the moon, whereas John is far less destructive. John couldn't even fully destroy Empire City. He turned it into a necropolis, but the city itself still stood. This difference in power level between the two versions of the same being shows how conduit abilities can vary significantly across timelines. For further proof, Cole replicates a similar blast in Numerase in the infamous 2 Evil ending.
John transferred his powers into me and then he just let go. The blast was devastating, but worth it. New conduits had been activated, all of them healed of the plague. We said goodbye to our old lives and got to work mastering our new abilities.
Now moving on to the next question. Shouldn't we believe Kessler's word about being able to fight the Beast? The idea that Kessler could have defeated the Beast is based on a misconception. This claim isn't actually made by Kessler himself. It's an assumption made by Cole.
In those early days, Kessler could have used his powers to stop it, but instead he fled with his family, leaving others to fend for themselves.
This distinction matters because many people believe that Kessler could scale to his version of the Beast, but this is based on Cole's speculation, not concrete evidence. Firstly, Cole's assumption that Kessler could have stopped the Beast is unsupported, as Kessler never actually fought the Beast in his timeline. It's purely a guess on Cole's part, backed up by nothing. Moreover, you don't run away from something you can beat, which leads into the second point. Cole is proven definitively wrong at the start of Infamous 2, as he gets hammered like a tent peg by the Beast in the beginning of the game, which is shown throughout the game to be weaker than the one in Kessler's timeline. Now going over the next question, why I don't scale Cole to the Beast Moon feat. This is a feat in the community people tried to use to get Cole to multi-con or moon level, as the Beast in Kessler's timeline destroyed the moon. The overarching issue with this feat is a threefold problem. Firstly is the lack of detail. We don't know how the Beast destroyed the moon or over how long over a period of time. This is very important because without these two key factors, this feat becomes unquantifiable. Now I'm going to repeat myself. I'm not denying the feat exists, we just don't have enough of the important details to know how he did it. Was it with one shot or multiple? Did he have to charge it, or was it casual? Depending on the answer to these questions, it would absolutely change where the Beast scales. Secondly, this is a Beast from another timeline. The one Cole fights doesn't show anything remotely on this level of power, and as shown with Kessler, as he has a completely different power set and height to Cole, differences in individuals can vary from person to person, as some can be taller, others a completely different level of power, and power set from an alternate universe version of themselves. We, in good faith, cannot attribute this feat to John, even if we knew the key details for how the feat is performed, as John is an alternate version of Kessler's Beast, not one Kessler is familiar with. Thirdly, even if I was to play Devil's Advocate and grant John the same stats as Kessler's Beast, Cole already doesn't scale to the Beast, as he is outclassed in power, and with the Beast being another prime example of AP not equating to durability, as he had to regenerate from a 51 kiloton bomb.
Bertrand, file B107.
It's a thing of beauty, Doctor. How powerful is it?
It's a low-yield missile, as per your instructions. The payload should be roughly 51 kilotons.
Oh man, we did it.
Looks like we won, all right.
Zeke, where the hell are you? Oh man.
Yeah, that's nothing to cry about. Thanks. Hey man, we got him. Damn.
Jesus, Zeke, you need help.
Reminds me of Empire City. Kessler kicked my ass.
Yeah, I ought to kick your ass.
Same difference. Hey brother, I'm in no shape to walk home. You clear a path to the truck?
Hey, wait. I'll hold that up for you. No way.
They hit a nuke. Now it's back to war. If I slow you down, we both die. Just go, man. Live to fight another day.
Would you shut up and start walking?
I don't care what people claim, he didn't tank it, otherwise he wouldn't have needed to regenerate after the blast. So, bottom line, Cole wouldn't scale regardless if I granted Scuff Dr. Manhattan the same AP as his alternate self, and when Cole is able to take him on, he has to be plugged into a substation to even stand a chance. Now moving on to the RFI amping Cole and being used as a multiplier. The RFI being used as an amplification for Cole doesn't work for a few reasons. First and foremost, the RFI doesn't have any statements about a multiplier, nor does it scale to anything we can use for a substitute. Secondly, granting him the multiplication, even if it had one, wouldn't be feasible, as for the RFI to reach full power, it had to be charged by multiple substations before Cole could even use it as intended. Even after absorbing the last blast core, while he could activate it, he still didn't have enough power to use it as intended. So I don't believe it's a good faith argument to give him an amp from something that needed to be powered up by an outside source for it to properly do its job. Now moving on to why do I use Prototype 2's DLC but not Infamous 2's Festival of Blood? This is a just question. The reason why I use Prototype 2's DLC is because of a few reasons, like most of the DLC powers can already be explained by powers he already possesses, like the Medusa's Wrath is energy manipulation, and Airtime is a combination of his power of density manipulation and his access to the entire pool of evolution on the planet. Other reasons are DLCs are canon until told otherwise. It doesn't matter if it's story relevant or if it's just in the base game, these are non-factors. There is also the fact that Dan Jolly straight up confirms it to be canon as well, which doesn't hurt. As for the Festival of Blood, there are a couple of reasons why we can't use it. Firstly, we don't know if the events even happened or if it's just Zeke trying to impress a floozy with a ravishing tale about his friend, which is most likely the case as even the ending cutscene implies this. Secondly, Cole loses his powers at the end of the DLC anyway. If it was told by Cole or had a statement about being canon, maybe there'd be something to work with. But because it's told by Zeke, it's probably not true and Cole lost the powers anyway, even if it was true. Now moving on to, isn't Alex weak to electricity? The quick answer is no. This is because of two factors. Firstly and most importantly, because of how Blacklight's adaptation works, when the black light is exposed to something, it will grow rapidly resistant to immune, as shown with Blood Tox. James Hiller's adapted to being fatally burned once and having a path of evolution that would lead to them being immune to gunfire. With the Heller point, when he was burnt again, it was an inconvenience that did little damage, meaning the more Alex is hit by Cole's electricity and ice powers, the quicker he'll become resistant to immune to those elements. If I felt a bit prickish, I could say he already has a jump start on that via his fight with Cross as he used a stun baton, and during the Orion Phase 1 fight, James has to destroy a transformer for more evidence for being immune to resistance. Secondly, if electricity was the virus's weakness, you'd see every Blackwatch soldier armed with electrical weapons, which none of them besides from Cross. The best way to take it is Alex during the fight isn't weak but had no resistance to electricity at that point in the story. So because Cole's fighting style is a mid to long range pot shotter, Alex has a high chance of becoming immune extremely quickly, if not after being hit once, making Cole dual powers useless. Now to go over my final conclusion at this point. Is there really any mystery who I think wins? Alex should win this fight with less than minimum difficulty. He holds a gigantic stat stomp in every category. Just for a brief rundown, even with the best interpretation possible for Cole's AP, he doesn't even reach Alex's lowest end. In terms of durability, Cole's durability isn't even worth mentioning, and even if I was super gracious and granted him his best interpretation people give him, which would sit him around the City to Large Mountain level, which is still vastly lower than where Alex's AP sits, so it's a moot point on Cole's part, and for Alex, shit! His lowest is Small Country, and his highest interpretation can get him brutally higher depending on what you're willing to accept. As for speed, while both can get to light speed, let's be frank, one is sitting prettier than the other by a lot. It's to the point that Cole wouldn't even be moving in comparison to Alex. In terms of hacks, while Cole has quantity, a lot of that quantity isn't helping him through and gets severely narrowed down thanks to Alex's evolution and adaptation. Not to mention, even if he doesn't adapt, just like the Ravagers, his armor and shield would bounce all of Cole's bolts away, which is the majority of his arsenal, whereas Cole has no real answer to most of Alex's win cons, especially infection and consumption. The best I can give is his shield can stop the Medusa's Wrath, but as I brought up in the hack section, there is a possibility for him to be infected by unintentionally absorbing the virus into himself. But even if he wasn't going to be infected by this route, the shield is only going to work for so long until Alex either speed blitzes or decides to attack another way, especially because the shield doesn't block physical attacks, just small projectiles and energy. While his other argument is he uses his magnetism to stop Alex as he should be full of iron, but this is assuming he even tries that, as he'd have no reason to attempt to use it on Alex as he would have no knowledge it would work, especially because it doesn't work against normal enemies. This is how the tally stacks up in the end. Last week come to my last words. Was this result a surprise to me? No, this is one of the 2 versus matchups that got me in the power scaling. I've been mulling over this match for pretty much near a decade, so I was extremely sure who would win, but finding more reasons why wasn't something I was expecting. Now, did I want to make this video in the first place? No, not really. I made that abundantly clear with several live streams, whether either I or somebody else brought up the topic. The only reasons I took on this task, because as someone who is an expert in both series and in videos covering both characters, people would ask me to make it, and because of how bastardized and misrepresented Prototype has been handled by G1, Death Battle, and the Mercer Wiki, and just power scaling in general, I felt obligated to put this fight to rest. Again, this was not a fight I wanted to make, regardless of how you feel or even if you believe me or not. I didn't find enjoyment in explaining in painful detail how Cole gets fucked the long way. I love Infamous, and while I did poke fun, that's all it was, fun, as I needed to keep myself entertained. Now that this saga is over, I can now focus on two videos I actually want to make: The Power of Toriko, and a video I've been promising for years, The Power of Drago from Bakugan. Look, even if you disagree with how I scale Cole, at least we can agree that Alex has been severely misrepresented in the power scaling community. And with all the evidence presented, even if you disagree with where I put Cole, I think I've definitively proven that Alex would win this matchup. Now, if you disagree with the arguments I presented, leave a timestamp in your issues with it. Otherwise, if you're going to make a comment out of anger, I want you to stop, look at what you're about to post, and if it can be summed up as, I don't like the results, just don't waste my time. This goes for a majority of what I've stated here. If you feel like you've got the silver bullet, just remember you have to have more or better evidence than I've presented. If you don't, then don't bother complaining and bitching just because you don't like the result. Before I leave, I want to thank the people who helped me throughout this video, from providing me feedback to calculations. Thank you Honecker, Mr. Mangler, William D. Weber, Zimmertorn, and Devil.
And on that terrible disappointment, it's time to end. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Somebody's going to be cross.
Yeah.